Hi there, welcome to this introduction into marketing fundamentals. My name is Ulf Johansson. Marketing is a very central part of every organization's operations, at least that's what I think. Some people think that counting money again and again and again is more important than looking at the market. Well, I'm not one of those. I think that marketing, which focuses on the market, is one of the most central parts of an organization. Okay, to many, marketing is something intuitive. You look at the TV screen, you see a commercial, you judge whether it's good or bad, and then you think you know marketing. Well, to me, marketing is something that is a lot more than that. A lot more things come into marketing. So what is marketing? I'm going to try to give you a list of ways and perspectives to think about what marketing is. You see 4 options here in this slide. An activity, a function, a management process, an orientation philosophy. I would say that in many organizations, marketing is seen by an activity performed in a function called marketing. So those people who work in the marketing functions are the ones who work in marketing. Well, I think that's a bit of a simplification because in many organizations, not least service organizations, and not least on industrial markets, I think it's a bit different than that. I also like thinking about marketing as an orientation philosophy. I think that is a good way in an organization to grasp what marketing is. To make it a little bit more complicated or giving you another perspective on what marketing is, I think a good way to describe it is to see marketing as activities that are performed to bridge a gap that exists between what is produced and what is consumed. And that is the most efficient way to bridge that gap is to work with building relationships of different kinds between the producer and the customer. And that includes a lot of different activities, I would say. Understanding needs and wants, creating products and services that satisfies these needs and wants, communicating and delivering on those needs and wants, and then the process goes back again and to understand the effects of what you've done. This is a bit back to the marketing as a philosophy in an organization. There are 2 ways, I think, to think about marketing from a relationship point of view. You can look at it in a more narrow way, focusing on customers, or you can see it as relationship building in a broader sense with company stakeholders. And this would then include, for instance, suppliers to the organizations. That would also include employees, shareholders, for instance. Employee is in many cases a very big and important stakeholder, and how the brand of an organization is perceived also by employees, potential and actual employees, is indeed very important. Okay, another way of looking at marketing is the way I've described to you earlier as a process with a start and an end. This is, of course, very much a simplification of a management process in an organization, where you try to understand what creates value for customers, you try to create it, you try to communicate it, and deliver on it. And then it starts again. This is very much a simplification, but it also sets out some important areas where marketing can and often work. in many organizations you don't talk about marketing, you talk about sales. And in a strict sense, from a marketing point of view, sales is part of marketing, not the other way around. But in many organizations, not least on industrial markets, business to business, there's more talk about sales than marketing. One way to look at it is to look at it from an adaptation process of the processes and services an organization sell, where marketing is in charge of awareness and interest, and sales are in charge of trying to create desire for a product or a service, trying to create action among customers. That is another way to saying buy. And then also loyalty, buying time and again. General also in growing companies, there is a focus on sales rather than marketing, but when the operation grows, there is usually a need to think more structurally about what you do towards the market, and then there is a need for some type of marketing activities as well as sales activities. Now this is quite a challenging question, and that's, I think, it's a central part in marketing to think about, should you listen to the customer? And of course, I mean, it's an easy question to answer in one way. Of course you should listen to the customer. Or maybe how much and to what degree and with what tools should you listen to the customer? There is a well-known concept in marketing that relates to this, and that is what we call marketing myopia. And that is when sellers focus more on wants than on needs of customers. There are some classic examples of this. When the railroads focused on their industry, they said they were in the railroad business, but really the need they are trying to satisfy is more a transportation need, and hence cars, airplanes are in the same industry as the railroads. Black & Decker once said they are not selling drills, they are selling holes. L'Oreal is not selling beauty products, they are selling hope. You can also ask yourself, what industries is the mobile phone companies in? What are they selling? What need? I mean, it's obviously some type of communication. Central here is that it is important to look broader on the needs and not only the wants that you're trying to satisfy as a company. And research that's been carried out in recent years say there is a difference between market-driven and market-driving companies. Market-driven companies are those who listen very carefully to the customers. They focus on the wants, not on the needs, while market-driving companies focus more on the needs than on the wants. In one way, one is very internally driven, the market driving, but it also concerns having information about the needs of customers. Okay, does marketing look the same way in industries with different structural conditions? Probably not. I've tried to map in some organizations in this map, and you shouldn't get hung up on me classifying them in the right spot, because I haven't put much effort into that. I'm just trying to show that you can distinguish between marketing situations where you have few customers and where you work on a mass market. You can also distinguish between whether you work with products or with services. And in the marketing literature, in the marketing practice, for many years, it's been said that it's very, very different to work with few customers than to work with many customers, and to work with products rather than services. And the marketing tools on different types of markets are also supposed to be very different. I mean, the 4Ps, the classic 4Ps, is typical consumer product mass market, while the 7Ps is an effort to try to incorporate a few other things that are more important on service markets, on industrial markets. For instance, people and process and physical evidence, where physical evidence and process are mostly important for service businesses, while people in many ways is of course a focus on industrial markets, where you have very few customers, and relationship with those few customers become very important, and of course the people who deal with those customers are very important. This is very much the classical view, that it should be in a certain way in consumer markets, and it should be a certain way on industrial markets, and it should be in a certain way on service markets. I would say that this clear division isn't there anymore. I would say that there are not so much difference anymore. Looking at business to business, comparing to business to consumers, you usually say that business to business, well, it's about relationship building as there are few customers. Business to consumer, well, it's very much about branding, really. It's mass marketing. Well, I would say that my observations is that in the last 10 years in business to business, you see many companies devoting a whole lot of resources towards branding in business to business. One example is Alfa Laval, another is General Electric, who put millions and millions into branding their operations because they feel that that is something that is necessary in the global market. What about business to consumer relationship building? Well, the development of social media is something that clearly creates new possibilities to build relationships to consumers also on mass markets. And moving towards the difference between products and services. Many organizations face and try to deal with commoditization of their products, become very much commodities. And one way to deal with that is to combine increasingly products with services. I call it servification. Adding services to add to differentiation of products. So what is a product then? Is it a product or really is it a service? In service industries for many years there's been a move towards productification. I mean, one of the big challenges with marketing services is quality and varying quality, and productification, standardization is another way to put it, of services is a big trend, and it has been a big trend for many years. I'm now going to move towards a specific area in marketing. One of those things that many people think is marketing, and that concerns branding. As I said before, I don't agree with that picture. I think that marketing is a lot more than keeping track of your brand. But anyway, branding is an important tool, and seen in a wider sense, it is an important tool. And I think that branding, in essence, is a lot about the three concepts you find in the slide that I'm showing you at the moment. Identity, profile, and image. Identity is how we see ourselves, at least in my way of interpreting it. Profile is how we want others to see us. And of course there can be a difference here between how we see ourselves and how we want others to see us. But then there is another perspective in this triangle as well, and that is how others see us. And you can see that there can be quite a number of dynamics in this triangle. One dynamic is between identity and profile. In profile you often see, you can see quite a few dynamics in this triangle. One is between identity and profile. If we see ourselves in a certain way, but it is communicated to others that we are in another way, there is a tension between identity and profile. And if there is a tension between identity and profile, what happens to image? How do others see us? How do customers see us if we are not clear on the profile? That is how we often communicate how we are and how we ourselves feel that we are, hence identity. Moving on from this, branding is part of building the equity of the firm. And in the last 15 to 20 years there's been lots of talk about branding as creating capital and creating equity in the organization. And of course the equity that is created by branding is so to speak, soft capital. It has to do with how involved customers are, how sensitive they are to the brand, how aware of the brand they are, what associations they have of the brand, and also, in essence and towards the end, how loyal they are to the brand. Of course, a brand that has great loyalty is worth more than a brand that has less loyalty. Moving on, branding can be seen as having at least two parts. One part, and that is often the part of branding that we think about, is the one that is aimed externally. It has to do with how the brand is perceived by customers, or in a broader sense by other stakeholders. But there is another part as well, and that is the internal part of the branding, that which builds up the organizational identity. Hopefully, there is a link between how we act externally and what we promise externally and how we act internally, our organizational identity. If you look at these two different perspectives of branding, the external and the internal, we get one of those nice 2x2 matrices. And linking also the internal and the external part of the brand to core values, internally, externally. We get a matrix where you have an ideal position. That is, you have externally perceived values that are very high, and you have internally rooted values that are very high. The values you have in this part of the matrix, if they are high in both cases, they are true. The opposite of that is having hollow values. Well, you promise things that you don't keep externally, and they are not perceived internally or rooted internally either. So this matrix gives an interesting test of the link between what you promise externally and what you actually do internally. One of the really classical branding question is the question between whether you should have one overarching corporate brand or you should work with a number of product brands instead. Well, there are of course different ways of determining what is best in certain cases, but it's usually a question of scale versus uniqueness. During the last couple of years, I think there's been a trend towards corporate brands rather than product brands. One good thing about the corporate brand is that it is more efficient in a way. Every time you mention the corporate brand, all the brands that are under it have their image enhanced. Again, this is an eternal branding question, and it also leads up to the question of how to handle when you have a portfolio of different brands. And then you have to deal with that according to if you have a general or a specific brand identity of the different brands you have, and towards a general or specific target group that the brands are directed. The opposite parts here is the mother brand, where you have a very general target group and a very general brand identity. I mean, here we have the corporate brands. Or you have a specific target group or a specific brand identity, and then we have the individual brands, the product brands. Using this type of matrix for organizations that have many brands can actually be an eye-opener when it comes to what type of brands you have and how they are profiled on the market. The usual perspective on branding is one that is the company's perspective on branding. And in today's media situation with social media, the management perspective on branding, which gives the illusion of the company or the organization being in control of what is communicated and how the brand should be seen on the market. I think that is very much an illusion nowadays. I think that the next picture here shows the situation as it is. When it comes to building the brand stories and creating the brand culture for certain brands, there are a number of authors out there on the market. One is obviously the firm or the organization that tells their stories about the brand and how they want the brand to be perceived. But there are many other authors. What consumers or customers share about the brand. For instance, IKEA has both fan clubs on the internet where customers share what they feel about IKEA, but they also have hate clubs, and you can easily see that they will tell very different stories about IKEA, and of course then influence other customers and their perception of the IKEA brand. General popular culture. How is the brand perceived? How is the brand communicated there? That is usually nothing the firm can control. The firm can listen and see and try to adapt their own communication to how the brand is perceived and what is talked about the brand in popular culture. And there are of course other influencers, bloggers, opinion leaders, whatever it is. But the important thing here is as a firm to acknowledge the fact that you are not in control the way you used to be. And for branding and for marketing, that means working with other things than was usually the case. And it also makes it difficult to believe one of the things that is quite clear, for instance, in the Kotler and Armstrong book, where you're given the perception that marketer is somebody who's control of what happens in marketing of, for instance, a brand. That is usually not the case. There are others that influence how the brand is perceived. One last thing I want to show you, and it is again a little triangle where on the axis you have the company, the customers, the employees. And you have the three different types of marketing that exist. Between the company and the customer, say the company are sending mass media messages of different kinds towards the customers. We call that external marketing. Between the employees, and now we are talking specifically about service industries, industrial marketing situations where you actually have some type of interaction between the employees and the customers. Then we also have something that is called interactive marketing. And of course, there need to be quite a lot of coordination between the external marketing and the interactive marketing, because, for instance, if external marketing promises something that interactive marketing is not able to deliver on, well, you have a problem. And there we have internal marketing to create the coordination that is necessary between interactive marketing and external marketing. And internal marketing is something that in many organizations is not given enough resources. I think that is one of the most important parts of the marketing work, is the coordination of the marketing activities, so that as a company you work in the same ways towards the market and is able to adjust in good ways towards what's happening on the market. Internal marketing has to do with a lot of different things. It has to do with being able to be responsive to the customer, given degrees of freedom. Internal marketing has to do with, if you work a lot interactive, you have to have satisfied employees, incitements of different kinds to steer towards the right type of behavior. Seminars and workshops are of course important to create the coordination. Human resources are of course important to spot the competence need. Socializing and culture, supporting and changing the culture is also part of internal marketing and is important to create the coordination. Those involved in interactive marketing need to be knowledgeable about processes and support. They also need to participate in decision making. And of course, internal marketing in essence has to do with internal communication and support systems, spreading relevant information, and also working on values and core values. Thank you very much.